Hi, my name is Christian, and today we're going to go over possible ships and fighters that could be introduced in Wave 3 and beyond of Star Wars Armada. I've been really happy with Waves 1 and 2, and let's take a look at what could join the Rebel fleet. I think one ship that is, first of all, priority of how ships should be added would be one, does it show up in the movies? Does it play a prominent role? Introduce those ships first, and then after that, start going into the expanding universe and borrowing from other things. And the first ship that I definitely think should be added to the Rebel fleet is the MC-80 Liberty class Montgomery cruiser. So there's I don't know why they're both MC-80, but they are. So there's the MC-80 Home 1 expansion that came out and that is about to come out in Wave 2, and that's the flagship that Admiral Akbar uses. The other ships in Return of the Jedi that you see very prominently that are more spread out, will have like a larger like wing wedge design, are the Mon Calamari Liberty type Star Cruisers, and as the picture shows, as well as like clips, like they're very shown very prominently in the movies. So definitely bring those in. According to the expanding universe, it goes into much more detail. They had a little bit more accurate turbo lasers, so I was thinking they would have maybe more of a anti-fighter role than just a two blue dye of some of the other capital ships. Maybe one of the versions could have three, but at the very least, definitely keep it with the two blue. Just by the shape of the ship, in that it was supposed to be more on par with the Imperial Star Destroyer, even though it's smaller, but its shields and the way it was designed supposed to make it a pretty good match for the Imperial Star Destroyer. So I think, unlike the Mon Calamari Home 1 ship, which is more of a side fighter, I think the Liberty Cruiser should, its most powerful arc be in the front, and have a little bit less dye than the Imperial Star Destroyer, but have, more powerful shields and maybe a higher engineering value. Because that was something that was supposed to be really prominent about the Mon Calamari cruisers, and that shown in the update cards for Wave 2 is the redundant shields. Like, they were supposed to have way more shield generators than the Empire would ever bother to put on their own ships, because they didn't think they would be coming across something of equal footing. So yeah, the MC Liberty Cruiser, it's shown a lot in Return of the Jedi. It should definitely be included. It's also supposed to be faster than the Home 1 model, so I'm thinking it should go up to speed 3, same maneuverability. I believe that the speed and maneuverability should essentially match the Imperial Star Destroyer. I mean, that's a very fast ship, so have it go up to speed 3, 0 tick, 1 tick, 1 tick at speed 3. Different title cards could be the Alliance, the Liberty, Justice. I believe Liberty is the one that is the first one destroyed by the Death Star 2's laser in Return of the Jedi, but it saw some action prior to its destruction. So the next ship I'm thinking about is the GR-75 medium transport ship, most commonly known as the Rebel transport ship, that's shown prominently in The Empire Strikes Back, landed on Hoth, the transport ships that they're running away with, and then shown very prominently in the Return of the Jedi amongst the Rebel fleet. As a viewer going back to the movies, I was really confused on why they were there even to begin with. They don't look like they have any kind of armament. Apparently, some of them could be modified to have like very limited weapons, but they're not fighter aircraft. They're not fighter ships. But apparently, in the expanding universe and some of the books, they talk about how the reason there were so many of those transport ships in with them is that they were automated and that they were used as fire ships or like ramming and using some kind of combat. So I think one version of the transport should be that automated ramming ability. Maybe any ship within range 1, at the end of its movement, it can choose to detonate and then the defender has to roll like 3 or 4 black dice, and criticals count, and the criticals would maybe possibly stack, and it could just do some terrible damage if you let it get that close. It should be relatively weak for that reason, and not even particularly fast. I'm thinking like a movement of 2, a hole of maybe 3 or 4, shields of 2, and then 1 in the back, or maybe just 1 all around if you really want to make it vulnerable. For armament, I'm thinking 1 blue dice all the way around and 1 blue anti-squadron, so it'll be very weak on its own, but if you get it in close, you could do some serious damage to any ships that are close by. The other variant of the ship that would be completely different would be for transport. And I was thinking maybe there could be a mechanic where it costs negative points to include it in the Rebel fleet. But if it's destroyed, I would say it's negative 10 for the Rebels to bring it in. But if it's destroyed, it's positive 20 or positive 30 points for the Imperials. So bringing them in will be a liability, but it allows you to make a larger fleet to counter it. So you could defeat the Imperial ships, but if they destroy enough of the civilians or cargo or supplies that the Rebel Alliance has, then it's an effective win against for the Empire against the Rebels. It's this idea of a bunch of ship that's like very prominent in both of those 2 movies, so I think there should be some kind of mechanic that's used in it. Now, the next ship that I borrowed from the expanded universe is the Kirlian Gunship, which is technically the DP-20 frigate, which is not nearly as memorable, but the Kirlian Gunship is very similar to the blockade runner. Its design isn't entirely dissimilar, but it's just supposed to be a gunship version of it, while the blockade runner is originally designed as like a cruise ship and just like a passenger that just has some armament to defend itself. So I'm thinking the Kirlian gunship should be a strong anti-fighter in games. It has a lot of missiles, a lot of things that can take down fighters. So I'm thinking a blue and a black dice, or maybe 2 black dice, as well as it would have very similar movement as the Kirlian Corvette, maybe a little bit, maybe only goes up to speed 3 or isn't as maneuverable at speed 4 as a Kirlian Corvette is. And for an armament, maybe instead of having the blue dice, it just swaps blue for black. So the main version would have 2 red and a black in the front rather than the Corvette, which is 2 red and blue. Something along those lines. I just think it's a cool ship from the expanded universe, and I think the Rebels could continue to use a small hitter like that. The next one is probably not nearly as well known because it's not featured in that many games, if any. So you may notice that a lot of my ideas are borrowed/stolen from the Star Wars Empire at War game. It was released back in 2010, the first one, and it was the expansion. And it's actually a pretty good game. Unfortunately, the multiplayer servers are down on Steam, but it's a really cheap buy right now that you can get. You can get both games for $20, but I've seen it been on sale for like $4 or $5. So it's definitely worth a buy. There's actually a lot of mods for it where you can have Stargate, you can have the Clone Wars, you could have the Old Republic, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica. It's actually a great space combat simulator, just in general. But they included a lot of the ships from the EU, and they did a good job bringing them in. One of those ships that is not in that game, well, a lot of them is the, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, the Flurry. It's up on the screen. Like, please yell in the comments if I'm butchering it. But it's an odd name, but it is a really cool ship in the expanding universe. It's just a pure carrier. It As you can tell from the image, it has very limited armament. It's not even that big. It's just a flying hangar bay. Very similar to what aircraft carriers are now. So what's interesting in the expanded universe in the books, it could hold 5 squadrons, while the Mon Calamari cruisers could only hold 3. And that's actually how many squadrons are in the Star Wars Armada game, is the Mon Calamari having 3. So I think give this ship 5 squadron command, which will make it a very tempting carrier build of any rebel carrier build to go ahead and include that ship. It should be somewhat cheap, especially compared to a larger ship like the Mon Calamari, but it will not be able to defend itself well. Definitely allow it to have the boosted comms upgrade, because I definitely think that'll be really useful, because you don't want the ship to be in close combat. I'm thinking for the shields, just 2 all the way around, maybe 1 in the back. For the combat, I'm thinking 1 very large front arc, but no arc whatsoever at the sides or the rear, because if you look at the ship, it doesn't seem to have any guns that face in that direction. So I think it should just be a carrier that just brings in a lot of ships. It can activate them, can be really dangerous. So I definitely think that'll be really good. And another mechanic of it, maybe this will be a title upgrade, is maybe allow squadrons that are within range 1 that are not engaged to heal 1. Could be an interesting mechanic that you would keep the ships around it as defense for the ship, as well as that it could swing in and get a repair and then essentially go back to combat that if it's really close. Yeah, it's a really cool ship. In Expanding Universe, it sacrifices itself and gets destroyed, but I'm sure that's going to happen plenty of other times in gameplay. So that's my immediate suggestions for Wave 3. I think fighter-wise, I think the Rebels are really good. Maybe eventually bring in the E-Wing, or as well as the Force Awakens model of the X-Wing, but we can talk that a little bit later on in the video. But for immediate use, I think these are pretty good Rebel ships that could be brought in.